The abomination drops my most sought after item in the entire.
Hello, welcome to the supplemental stream to the Enchantments only run. I figured it would be much better to do this separately than as part of the video because it might be a little too much to try and fit that into the video when I'm going over all of the enchantments, what they do, and how I use them in the playthrough. So hopefully this will work out. Is the music a little too loud or is it a good level? It's always hard to tell. It sounds quite loud for me, to be honest. Let me have a listen on my other screen. Okay, I'll turn it down a smidge if possible. Although it's hard to get somewhere between like 0% and 5% on the YouTube player. Maybe that's better. We'll go with that. So yeah, the plan with this stream is to rank all of the enchantments that I've just played with. And the first one appears to be the Adamantite enchantment. So let's have a look at that in game. Let's get the Adamantite enchantment out. So this makes weapons fire faster the longer you fire them. So let's get a weapon that you'd normally have at that stage. Let's go with the Adamantite repeater, I guess, since that goes well with it. Where's the repeater? There we go. And let's get an arrow pouch. Is it, pouches for the... It'll be the quiver for... Yeah, endless quiver. A couple enchantments changed while I was working on the video. Yeah, that's kind of annoying, but it is what it is. So without this, it's dealing like 140 damage roughly, 150 depending on whether I get crits. And then with it, I guess it's getting faster. It definitely is getting faster, up to 200 DPS. That's actually pretty good. It doesn't help that I'm missing a lot of them. Although I guess that's part of it, is I'm missing because the enchantment causes me to get inaccuracy on my weapons. So I think it's a decent boost to damage if you can find a weapon that goes well with it. I know that it doesn't work with homing enchantments or with homing weapons, so I'm gonna put it in B tier because it's kind of situational whether it's useful or not. I can already tell you where Ancient Cobalt Enchantment's going, but let's actually show you what that does. This is one of my favourite enchantments that I played with in the entire run. Ancient Cobalt Enchantment does this, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it also does decent damage to enemies. I mean, it does like around 100 damage per jump, and inflicts the oiled debuff, so if you're using anything with fire, then that's going to deal more damage. But the main thing is that it gives iframes, which is really useful for dodging, especially the Queen Bee's horizontal dashes. You might have saw in the video that anytime the royal servants were out, you could just press space and you avoid their damage entirely. The creative mode mod is Dragon Lens. That's what that is. And yeah, even the Eye of Cthulhu, you could dodge a lot of things with it. There, so many projectiles or bosses can be dodged with it, and it makes wings. Let me get wings up. Let's try angel wings, I guess. So yeah, with this, you fly full speed instantly, and then I don't have this equipped. You'll see I start off so much slower and I'll get much less height. Like, I'm getting up to there and then I equip this and I go so much further because I get that instant acceleration. I don't have to waste flight time getting more acceleration going. So yeah, I think it's pretty fair to put the Ancient Cobalt Enchantment into S tier, which could be controversial. There's maybe an argument to say that it could be down in A, but oh, I've realised I've not actually got the screen there. Yeah, Ancient Cobalt Enchantment is going into S tier. And then we've got Ancient Hallowed next, which I didn't really play with in the playthrough. I realised I'd already searched Ancient, so that would have been fine. So yeah, Terra Prisma minion. Follows the cursor. I can slash with right click. I tell you what, that actually does pretty good damage. I guess you would have to have your cursor very close to the enemy though. I mean, what's the range of this? Yeah, it does have to be kind of within the sword. So I'm gonna... Yeah, I'm gonna have this issue throughout the whole stream. That's quite annoying. Okay, this is actually really good damage. I should have used this. So yeah, Ancient Cobalt Enchantment summons a Terra Prisma minion. I do think that there's a limited range here though, unless it's because I'm zoomed all the way in. Yeah, that's quite a limited range. It would probably do best for melee damage. Like if I was using a sword at this range, it's just extra damage. But yeah, I actually quite like this. I might put this in A tier, to be honest. Especially the fact that it reflects projectiles back at enemies. With 15-second cooldown, of course, but that could be used sparingly for some appropriate times, I guess. Okay, let's pop it on the tier list. I think I'm going to put it in A tier. I think it's got you. Oh, no, let's put it in the top of B tier for now. It does better damage than the Adamantite enchantment, but is much more limited in range. Yeah, actually, Neville does have a point. The reflecting projectiles might put it back up into A tier. Okay, we'll go with A tier for now. And then next up is the Ancient Shadow. We're getting through all the Ancients in one go. Your attacks inflict darkness on enemies, darkened enemies occasionally fire Shadow Flame tentacles at other enemies, dealing magic damage. So this is the hard mode variant. Let's get all these off actually, so they don't get in the way. So that doesn't hit the enemy itself. I think you have to, yeah, you hit them yourself, which is actually harder than it seems. And it probably does about the same damage as the Ancient Hallowed. And I'm wondering if something like if I was to use the Uzi with this, would it be much easier to hit those? Yeah, it's a bit easier to hit them. And I wonder if it would just, if I keep firing, no, it's kind of missing them a lot of the time. Although then when it hits them, it hits all three. The fact that it's homing is nice, and in fact I'm wondering how well it works with whips. If I was to use, say, the Cool Whip. No, it doesn't work very well with whips. It must need to be an actual projectile, and this is not counted as a projectile. So I'm going to have to docket some points for that. If it worked with whips, it would probably be A or B tier, but I think, honestly, with how awkward it is to get the buff from it, it's probably going to go C tier. There's just better damage boosts at that point in the game. Angler Enchantment. I don't know if I really need to show you what this does, because it can just be explained so well by looking at the tooltip, which is increases fishing power, you catch fish almost instantly, and effects of the lava-proof tackle bag. It is basically the only accessory you need for fishing. I guess I can show it. So let's get a rod. You probably have the golden rod at this point, so let's go with that, and let's get some bait. And where can we fish? We can fish here. Yeah, so here's fishing without. Yay, 3 fish. Here's fishing with. Basically instant. I think it has to go in S tier. I think it would be unfair to place it in anything other than S. Oh, it gets buffed by the wizard as well. I did not realize that. I should actually maybe be looking at how these interact with the wizard enchantment while I'm playing. Well, at least once the wizard enchantment's available. Oh, it gives you extra lures. Yeah, 5 extra lures. That's quite nice. And then number of shadow orbs increased. That's just an extra 1. That's kind of a terrible buff for it, to be honest. Where did my... Oh, I've probably lost my super dummy because it despawns when I'm further away. Yeah, shadow enchantments kinda just bad, I think, even with the wizard. What about the other ones? The other ancients. What does this do? Sword damage increased, projectile damage cap increased to 200. So what kind of damage does it do now? Oh, quite a lot. So it's around the 800, 700, 800 level. Oh no, just 500. I just got lucky with some crits. And then I guess it's probably about double damage. Not enough to change where it is, I don't think. And Cobalt is already an S tier. What does this do? Increased jump height with explosion, damage, and size. Okay, how's it without the wings? Am I going to die? No, I've got God Mode on. Of course I won't die. Okay, yeah, there's a little buff there, but I don't know if it's necessary to use it with that. And then the Adamantite enchantment that I've already done. How does that deal with the wizard? Speed bonus increased to 50%. What is it originally? 30%. So an extra 20% is not bad. But the inaccuracy is still hard to reconcile. Unless you're fighting the destroyer, because inaccuracy doesn't matter so much against the destroyer. They added fast fall to Cobalt enchantment. Oh. I mean, if it wasn't already in S tier, it would be now. How does that? Okay, yeah, that's quite noticeable. Yeah, Cobalt definitely in S tier. That's useful even in hard mode, to be honest, even though it's the pre-hard mode version. What's next on the list? It's the Apprentice enchantment, it looks like. While attacking, fire your next closest weapon's projectile as support. Now I do think that I use this quite a lot in the playthrough, and for good reason. Especially if you're doing something with a debuff, this can be especially useful. So say I get the Golden Shower. Where is it? There we go. Yeah, if I wanted to use the Uzi with Chlorophyte bullets, but I also wanted to inflict Ichor, I could do this. But the weapon it works best with, I would say, is Betsy's Wrath, or maybe the Vampire Knives. So yeah, I like the Apprentice enchantment, and then this just makes it fire more often, so it's 1/5 of the attack speed rather than 1/7. I do wonder, does that affect the Adamantite enchantment as well? I think it maybe does. It's hard to tell though. What if I put that in here? Is there some synergy there? Can you use two of the same weapon to get a 20% DPS up? Maybe. Let me have a look. I don't know why you would want to do that, to be honest. I feel like the benefit comes from being able to use multiple weapons without having to actually use multiple weapons. I can't tell if this is working or not, to be honest. It's dealing about 250 damage, 270 damage without it. Yeah, I guess it must be working, but it's not that worth it, I would say. I'm going to put the Apprentice enchantment into A tier. Then what we've got next, the Boreal Wood enchantment. This is a challenging one to rate because you can get it so early on that it can be quite useful, but it's also quite limited. So attacks will periodically be accompanied by several snowballs dealing range damage. Now by the time you get this, you're probably going to be using something like, let's say, the Blade of Grass. And with the Blade of Grass, because it only does a percentage of the damage, it's dealing like 4 damage or something on hits. I suppose I could figure out by going far. Yeah, 8 damage per hit. Sometimes 10 if I get a good 15% plus or minus. It's nice early game, but I don't know if it's nice enough. You know, it's like, it's there. What's the damage with it compared to without? So with the wizard, I'm getting about 150, 160 DPS. Without wizard, 100 DPS. And then with nothing, 60. So it doesn't change my DPS that much. I think even Blade of Grass is too far forward in progression. Well, the thing is, it does a percentage of damage, so you kind of want something with... Maybe the musket is a good weapon to try this with, because it has a slow attack speed and a high damage, and since it does a percentage of damage, yeah, this is maybe a better way of showcasing it. So it's shooting them every second shot, essentially. And yeah, I guess that's almost like double, in some cases, the damage. I think based on how early you can get it, it's pretty good, but it does lose its efficacy quite quickly. And for that reason, I'm thinking B tier, but maybe above Adamantite. B enchantment, you already know where B enchantment's going to go. It's one of, if not the best enchantments in the game, along with the wizard. This saved me in the playthrough. I do not think I would have been able to... Why can't I place that? Okay, it wasn't letting me place that in there. Oh, it's because I've got wings on, that's why. Because it acts as wings. Oh, they've changed the sprite for that, I think, since I played. So yeah, it actually does pretty decent damage as well. Like if you manage to collect all of these, it's dealing quite a good bit of damage. And if you combine it with the Ancient Cobalt, you actually get really good mobility for pre-hard mode. And you could also use it with something like the Aeolus boots as well for even better mobility. I think this is all you would need in pre-hard mode, mobility-wise. Is it the Aeolus boots? No, Zephyr boots. Yeah, I mean, you can obviously go back to previous ones, but like, look at that mobility. And you've got the fast fall. And the extra damage from the bees. Like, could you actually ask for much more? That's really all you need. And for that reason, even without taking into account bee enchantment with the wizard enchantment, which takes up bee wings, I mean, look at that mobility. Even without the ancient cobalt, it's still pretty good. You're still getting bee wings at the cost of 2 accessory slots, to be fair, but you also get the bee damage, which gets buffed even more. And I think they maybe spawn more often, it looks like. I mean, that's like 1,000 damage from bees alone. That's better than I was getting with the Uzi. Obviously, you're not going to be fighting bosses like this, but yeah, it's... I feel like actually I need to move everything down a tier to indicate how good the bee enchantment is. In fact, I'm going to move everything down a tier to indicate how good the bee enchantment is. I was a bit preemptive putting this stuff up in S tier. Yeah, it's better than the ancient cobalt for sure. What's this? The beetle enchantment. I did use this in the playthrough, but I kind of regret using it. I feel like there was maybe better things to use. Beetle enchantment. Right, I don't want to empower it first. Let's clean up some of this actually. Keep that. Keep the wings. So, beetles increase your damage and melee speed. When hit, beetles instead protect you from damage for 10 seconds. So it gets capped at level 2 as opposed to the level 3 that you get from the armor. But it's a pretty decent damage boost if it'll spawn. Where are they? Where are the beetles? Why are they not spawning? Should spawn from melee damage, I think. Unless they're bugged at the moment. What could I test this with? Water fight, I guess, is somewhat on this stage. While we're on the green weapons from the jungle. There we go, there's one spawning. I think it's that you need to deal enough damage to spawn them. So yeah, 430 damage, and then if I do this with the wizard enchantment, it goes up to level 3, I think. So I should get another beetle soon, hopefully. Or not. Why am I not getting another beetle? Beetle buffs can reach level 3, yeah. So it's level 1. Level 2. Why am I not getting level 3? Does it just not work? I'm not too sure. Is it because I'm not dealing enough damage? Does it need to... Okay, that's it, I think. Yeah, you need to deal a certain amount of damage to get the third layer of buffs. But 30% melee damage and melee speed is quite big. That's like a 60% damage boost if you're using the right weapon. Or if you're not using the wizard enchantment, it's like a 40% damage boost, which is still really good. And if you get hit, then it changes to either 30 or 45% damage resistance, which is also really good. So I think I'm going to put the beetle enchantment at the top of B tier. I think that's where it deserves to be. Oh, that wasn't the boreal wood enchantment. That must have been the ash wood enchantment. Okay. So boreal wood enchantment goes here, and let's figure out where ash wood goes. I'm not saying it's going to be an F tier, I'm just putting it there to remember to check it. Let's have a look at the ash wood enchantment, which is usually only obtainable early on if you're doing a don't dig up seed, because the recipe for it requires a few easy things from the underworld, but still getting to the underworld in a normal world is going to take quite a while. But I've heard that it can be very useful for don't dig up, because it makes fire debuffs not damage you, and when you're afflicted with any debuff, you get balls of fire for extra damage, which is quite good. Especially with the which we will get to later. What one? Is it the molten enchantment it's called? Since this ignites you when there's enemies around you. Or it should, maybe, because I'm in god mode, I don't get it. Or because this doesn't get classified as an enemy, I guess. But usually this would deal quite well with the Ashwood enchantment, which at that point would have been upgraded to the Obsidian enchantment. But on its own, I don't think it does enough to warrant it being there. It's like a nice utility for don't dig up, but other than that, maybe I was kind of right to put it in F tier. I might actually have been quite right putting it in F tier. It's probably not worth going out of your way unless you're in a don't dig up seed. And I'm going to have to put something in F tier at some point. So it's going there. Cactus enchantment is next, and cactus enchantment is really fun. I really like the cactus enchantment. Let's have a look at it. I didn't even look at the wizard stuff for this because by that point it will be the obsidian enchantment, so there's really no point looking at that. Let's get rid of the molten enchantment as well. Let's get the blade of grass out because that's more on this tier. Yeah, this is very nice as a damage boost. It's like a 30% damage boost with the blade of grass on 30 to 50%, I'd say, depending on what luck you get. I'm wondering if I stand right inside if it's going to deal more damage or less. But it also explodes into cactuses when you kill enemies, which is really good. Oh, thank you for the donation, Neville. Had to step out, but I hope Fishing 1 is S tier bribe. Fishing 1 is currently A tier, because I think that there does need to be a gap between like the Fishing 1 and the Cobalt 1, and then the Bee enchantment and the Wizard enchantment, because the Bee enchantment and Wizard enchantment are just so good. Cactus enchantment passive is nice too. What do you mean by the passive? I'm not quite sure what you mean, that one. The fact that it doesn't let cactuses deal damage to you in Eternity mode. So with the Wizard enchantment, I don't know how good this is. 500 DPS without it. Near enough 300, so this is actually quite a good way of increasing your damage. If you're doing very close combat, I mean, you're going to want to use this with something like swords. So let's rank the Cactus enchantment, and I'm going to say Cactus enchantment is going in B tier. It's a pretty good buff to your damage, and it also helps you in Eternity mode in general, since it makes you immune to cactus damage. Which brings us on to the Chlorophyte enchantment. And the Chlorophyte enchantment summons a ring of leaf crystals to shoot at nearby enemies. And while using wings, spores will continuously spawn. And also grants a dash, but the dash is quite short distance, to be honest. Let's get wings on to show the full effect of this. So total damage output is about 400 if you're close enough for the spores to hit enemies. So all things considered, we've had enchantments that deal more than that. Like even the Bee enchantment deals more than that if you're actually managing to collect the flowers. Well, that's if you're using it with the Wizard enchantment, I guess. So let's check it with that. Okay, that's actually quite disappointing, honestly. The dash is nice, but I don't think it's like a... It's not a ram dash, which is the best kind of dash. I think it is kind of bad, Prisma. I think you may be right. Wizard enchantment dealing dealing 300 damage. I'm pretty sure we could get the Cactus enchantment dealing that, depending on the weapon we use it with. Yeah, so we're about 450 with Wizard enchantment, or I suppose it should be. Yeah, that's like 200 damage for the Cactus. Looks like a deep diver with no deep, pretty much. Let's rank that, and honestly, it's not going to do quite well. I think Chlorophyte enchantment is D tier, all things considered. The dash is nice, the fact that you've got a dash and you've got some extra damage as well, but considering the other options, I think D tier is fair. Now moving on to the upgrade of the Ancient Cobalt enchantment, the normal Cobalt enchantment. And I'm sure you will not be surprised to see that this is just as good as the Ancient Cobalt enchantment. In fact, I don't think you get much from the upgrade other than it dealing more damage. Your other jumps are stronger and cause explosions on a short cooldown. Oh, so if I did use this with, say, the bundle of balloons. I would get explosions from that as well. That's interesting. I think that must be a recent change. I don't think that was the case when I was playing. But I'm assuming that with wings and balloons, this is quite a good pairing. And then increased explosion damage with the wizard. Honestly, the ancient cobalt enchantment is dealing more damage than the chlorophyte enchantment. And it basically acts as a vertical dash, which I would say is much rarer than a horizontal dash, so therefore more useful and unique. Ancient cobalt enchantment is going next to its younger brother in the A tier. And I forgot to turn that on, so let's do that again. Ancient cobalt enchantment is going next to its brother in the A tier. At some point I will remember to actually change between these, but that's not now. Next up we have the copper enchantment. Where's the copper enchantment gonna go? So critical strikes can shock enemies with chain lightning that arcs between 5 enemies. So I'm gonna need multiple super dummies for this. So when I get crit, which I think with this is only going to be like a 4% chance because I've got no crit boosts. It does deal quite a lot of damage when I do get that crit. I enjoyed using this a lot against the Brain of Cthulhu for the creeper phase, because when combined with the rain enchantment, it's really powerful because you don't need to crit. I think copper enchantment, I think it's going to get B tier. I think it's about as good as the cactus enchantment, I would say. I think it's more damage but less pierce now. That makes sense, yeah. Because I don't think it had the 5 enemy limit when I was playing. Which was kind of busted, I have to say. Especially against the evil bosses, which is when you would be using it, roughly. So what's this one next? This is the Crimson Enchantment. This is one that you definitely get more use out of the more skilled you are. Because you have to avoid getting hit for 7 seconds and then you get 50% of the health back from the hit you took. So I'm not really going to be able to show this unless I come out of God mode. So I suppose let's get some health crystals so I don't have to die. They're called life crystals. And then let's get an enemy here. Purple slime shall do. So if I avoid getting hit for 7 seconds, I should get 14 health back. Yeah. It's pretty good, honestly. The tech with Crimson Enchantment is pairing it with Gold Shell. Oh, interesting. So if you get hit, and then I actually needed to get the aggro of that slime, annoyingly. Let's get something with a bit more health. Or just multiple of them. Okay, so I avoid getting hit. Oh, I forgot to set the... I need to set the skill for this. I used that at the wrong time for testing this. Either way, think it's gonna get a decently high option, but realistically, you have to be good at the game to benefit from it. And I think since it's so skill-based, it's gonna have to be C tier. It's good when you're good, but if you're not good, you're not gonna benefit from it. And I feel like when it comes to a tier list, you kind of have to assume that the player isn't one of the best players in the game. Otherwise, they don't need to think about their gear that much. Like, if you're good enough to use the Crimson Enchantment, you're probably good enough that it's not that useful to you. So, you know, you'd probably be better using a damage increasing enchantment. But next up, we have Crystal Assassin Enchantment, which I thought quite fondly of in the playthrough. I used it whenever I wasn't using Crystal Assassin armor in early hard mode. It gives a dash and gives you the first strike buff if you go through an enemy. So if I spawn in another slime and oh, I thought I would get the first strike buff if I dashed through it. How does this work? I'm maybe misremembering this. I think it's when you teleport. Oh, it's when you jump while dashing into the ground. Okay. So you get like a boost if you jump and dash from the ground, which buffs your next melee strike. That's less situational than I thought when I first did the playthrough. I kind of thought it was going to be a case of you had to dash into the ground and then jump. Like you had to make it really, you had to time it really well. But the fact that you can just dash along the ground and then jump makes it alright, I would say. Yeah, first strike causes your next attack to deal 1.5 times damage, guarantees a critical strike, and reduces enemy defense by 10. You can also do diagonal dashes, which, all things considered, aren't that useful. I guess you could use it if you've run out of flight time and need to go up a little. Like if I'm falling down here. In fact, that works quite well for reversing when you've run out of flight time. Am I losing height? I think I'm slightly losing height, but not much, all things considered. I like it. I don't think it's like top tier, but I think it has its place. I think C tier is probably fair. C is still good, by the way. The thing is, none of these enchantments are necessarily bad. Some of them are overshadowed by other options. So like the Ashwood enchantment isn't bad, it's just very situational. You can only really get use out of it and don't dig up. The Chlorophyte and Ancient Shadow enchantments aren't bad, but there's better ones. Like the ones up here are going to give you much better chances of surviving and killing bosses than the ones down here. But they're not useless, I would say. I don't know, maybe one of them later on will be useless. I'm not sure. What's this one? What are we on? We're on C, right? That should be the... Is one of the old ones Army Shinobi? No, not going to be Shinobi Infiltrator. That's not starting with a C. What are the different enchantments called? I suppose they'll be in alphabetical order in this, hopefully. Dark Artist, that's it. So this is the upgrade to the Apprentice enchantment, which basically gives you the effect of the Wizard enchantment built in, plus gives you a Flame Burst minion, which is quite a good minion, to be honest. Especially if I then give an actual weapon that fires, for sure. I do quite like the Dark Artist enchantment, especially the minion homes, so we can kind of test its damage on its own. And it seems to be doing about 200-250 DPS, which is quite good. And then you can empower it further with the Wizard enchantment, which increases it to 1/3 of the time. It's especially useful with either the Vampire Knives or, sorry for the Discord noises, Betsy's Wrath, that's the other one. I mean, I guess we could use them in conjunction with each other, but... Oh, I'm out of mana, that's why I can't attack. That makes sense. But yeah, being able to constantly inflict Betsy's Wrath, or being able to use the Vampire Knives while you're using something else, say the Chlorophyte Claymore, is really helpful. I think it helps out a lot with certain loadouts, and you could really build loadouts around it. And I think for that reason, it's probably better than all of these ones in B tier, all things considered. I think I'm going to go A tier for it. I think it's significantly enough better than the B tier options. Not quite S tier though, for sure. Am I getting pinged? I'm getting messaged by Wexel Radley. Yeah, he's I can't really show it on stream, but yeah, he's noticing that the texture pack has changed the Dungeon Guardian projectiles from the Eternity Mode skeletons in the dungeon into little Wexel Radleys, which is thanks to you, Neville, because of the pet thing. Eternity Mode uses the Skeletron pet. I don't know if it's the Skeletron or the Dungeon Guardian pet as a projectile for skeletons in the dungeon, and then yeah, it's basically skeletons throwing little Wexel Radleys at me, which is kind of funny. So what have we got next? The Ebonwood, I think that is. Ebonwood enchantment. This one I fear is a little disappointing, but you do get it so early on in the game that it's hard to classify it as bad or good. So yeah, it gives you an aura, this circle here, of corruption, and if an enemy stays in that for 5 seconds, no, 3 seconds maybe, or has it changed since I played? I think it might have changed since I played, because it used to say that you had to keep them in for 3 seconds, and then after that they would be corrupted and get 5 flat damage extra, and you would get, I think, 20% less contact damage from them or something. Let's get some enemies. Clear items. Purple slimes are getting bullied today. So yeah, I think I do need to keep them in the aura. For them to get the damage. Let's have a look if I try and kill them. Yeah, I'm dealing more damage after the 3 seconds, I think. So it's like useful maybe against the Eater of Worlds or the Brain of Cthulhu, but realistically, it's probably not worth using. I think it's gonna go down in the F tier with the Ashwood enchantment. It's hard for a wood enchantment to actually get out of the F tier, I would say. Like, it's rare that they're gonna transcend into the higher tiers. But let's have a look at where the forbidden enchantment stacks up. Oh, before I move on, I think that, yeah, the wizard enchantment just increases the aura size. So it's now this big. And then the flat damage and damage reduction increases. So basically doubles the effects and the size. Now, this grants skill, so I'm going to need to go to the skill menu. Put that on mouse 5. So I can call an ancient storm on my cursor, which deals roughly 140-150 damage per second, it seems. And if I fly through this, so let's get my flight time out. Oh. Yeah, I can recover my flight time by landing in it, which has some utility, I guess, but I don't know how often it works. It seems every time. It seems I recover flight time every time I go through it. Which is pretty good, I would say, actually. And the other part is firing projectiles through it. So, I don't know how I can show this. I guess this should work if I put that there. Hopefully the Uzi will show this. So I should be dealing more damage to the one on the right than the one on the left. On average. Obviously hard to tell. I suppose I could show with this first. It's about 270, 260 damage. Then if I add the storm, it's gone down, never mind. No, it's gone up on average, yeah. It just takes a second to increase, I guess. So you get your flight time 10 blocks earlier. Yeah, that is the thing. Although no, you can place it anywhere. So I can get my flight time here. Yeah, you can place it mid-air on like the armor set version. I think it has uses. I think C tier is a fair place for it, to be honest. I think it has utility, but it's probably not going to be something that you build a loadout around, and it's not just like a base stat boost. You kind of have to go out of your way to use it right, especially because you've got to use the keybind for it. So I think that's fair. And then after this, we've got the fossil enchantment, which used to get crafted into the forbidden enchantment. Oh, and for the wizard enchantment, that just increases the damage boost from 20% to 40%. Fossil is S in hardcore. Well, that's the thing, is a lot of these are better in certain runs than others. Like with the Ashwood enchantment, it's kind of terrible in any run other than Don't Dig Up. So with the fossil enchantment, I'm going to need to get some more slimes back. So these slimes are going to need to kill me. Annoyingly, they're not doing a very good job at it. Yeah, I do have it equipped, just checking. Yeah, I die. And then if I touch these bones, I get 20 health. And I'm immune to damage until I think it's 5 seconds you're immune to damage or something. Or is that maybe just the Spectre? But yeah, it's definitely very useful for hardcore, because if you get hit by like a trap or something, you don't die 100% of the time, which is nice. I mean, you kind of need to be careful for the next 5 minutes because you've got the cooldown on it, but even still. I think, yeah, definitely a really good survivability boost. It gives you a second chance in a boss fight. I didn't use it personally in my run, but I would maybe give it a B tier, all things considered. I think the pumpkin enchantment is potentially better survivability, all things considered, and you can get the pumpkin enchantment a lot easier, and the pumpkin enchantment does offense as well. Is the debuff damage clearable from the boss? I'm gonna assume not, but let me have a look. Let's get the nurse. No, it does not go away. It's a funny way to get the frequent fire buff. Okay, so what have we got next? I think that's the Frost enchantment next, which I can't say I gave much thought to during the playthrough. The Frost enchantment makes my attacks inflict frostburn and makes icicles appear around me. Attacking will launch them towards the cursor, dealing magic damage. When they hit an enemy, they are inflicted with frostbite and frozen solid. Okay, so if I place this, and then... Okay, so 574 damage in one go. Not bad, but it takes a while to charge up. I think this is one of those that would do really well with the Mithril enchantment. Is it the Mithril one that you... Yeah, increases your attack speed if you've not attacked for a while. So if you waited for the Mithril enchantment to speed up, and then did all that, and then waited again, although it takes longer for the Frost enchantment than it does for the Mithril enchantment, it seems. Oh, it does look like the icicles appear even if you're still attacking though. So let's have a look without the Mithril enchantment at the actual damage boost. So with it, I'm getting around 320, 300 damage per second, and without it, I'm at like 240. So it's a sizable boost. That's the cobalt. I need to get rid of these actually. I don't want to be getting them confused. So the icicle damage is doubled with the wizard, which I don't think is enough to make it viable. Well, I say it's not enough to make it viable. It does deal a decent amount of damage, I'm not gonna lie. It deals more than I thought it would, especially because I thought you had to stop attacking for them to actually spawn. So I think maybe C tier with the Forbidden enchantment, to be honest. A decent boost, but not too useful. Well, if you're going for a full damage loadout, maybe yes, but there's probably other options otherwise. So next up we have the Gladiator enchantment. Let's have a look at that. So this gives them another skill, so I'm going to need to set that up on my keybinds. So I can place down a banner, and within the banner I get increased damage and damage reduction, knockback immunity, and improved spear rain. So the spear rain is these spears that fly down on enemies. So let's get a few of these going. So the spears, I think, do deal quite a bit of damage when you're in the arena range. So I'm at around 280, 290 damage with the spear, I suppose. Yeah, I know, I still lose it even if I take the thing off. And then 220 damage without it, 240. Well, that's actually not that big a buff, all things considered. But the knockback immunity is the main thing you're getting from this. And the damage reduction, I guess, helps as well. It's a good buff overall, but you do have to be quite aware of where you're placing the banner and staying within it. The wizard enchantment increases the range, so it's a little bit more viable with this, because I mean, this is actually quite a big range. But you do need quite a big range during hard mode boss fights, so whether it's worth it or not, I'm not sure. And you do get the doubled stat buff. So yeah, let's have a look with the Uzi actually. So So we're dealing 600, 700 damage with it, and then without it, 600 damage. So yeah, when the spears hit, it does increase your damage quite a bit, but when they don't, it's not that worth it. I am going to place the Gladiator enchantment in C tier. I did use it in the playthrough for a bit. I also need to get the music back on. Yeah, just playing now. Okay, so gold next. Now gold is one of those interesting ones that it has an ability that works from the player's inventory, which makes it quite hard to rank because it's like inherently useful on its own just by placing it in the inventory, because all coins go straight into your inventory, or straight to your piggy bank, should I say. So I pick up coins and they just go straight to my piggy bank. I don't have to worry about dying. It's kind of the opposite of what would be useful in hardcore, I guess, because it has no use in hardcore, coins going into your piggy bank rather than your inventory. So I think I'm going to have to judge it based almost entirely on its actual effect, which I'm going to put in mouse 5 again, which is this encased ability, which stops you from receiving damage for 5 seconds, I believe, and then goes on cooldown for 55 seconds, which has some use. It's definitely not useless, but the situations where it's useful are quite limited. If you're oh, especially with Wizard, Gold Shell is perfect for hot swapping. That's true, actually, yeah. Increased shell duration. I need to check how long it lasts once the effect runs out. Tech is massive. That's true. You could build around this. Basically, you could spec out an entire loadout to plan a certain part of a boss fight. Like if there's a bullet hell that you're really bad at, you can use the gold enchantment to get through that. Let's see how long it lasts. Okay, so 10 seconds instead. Let's double. So if there's a 10-second bullet hell that you really cannot do, then this would help. But I don't know. I'm gonna struggle to put this any higher than maybe C tier, all things considered. I can maybe push it up to B tier, the bottom of B tier, I would say. Because it does have some niche uses where it is very useful, but overall, you're not going to get much utility out of it. Every boss that has big attacks. Oh yeah. Okay, let's move it to mid B tier. Mid B tier. And then next up we have the normal hallowed enchantment. Which makes healing potions restore 40% more but take effect over time. And using a healing potion creates a shockwave that repels nearby enemy projectiles. So let's get some potions as well. Oh, I'm going to stick damage to actually showcase this. Let's get NPCs that actually fire projectiles. Let's get the worst NPC in the game, some goblin archers. Where are the goblin archers? There we go. Oh, they go through platforms. That's annoying. Goblin sorcerers, they work. So I'm taking damage, and then if they fire at the same time, oh, they're going to teleport before they fire next. Oh, that didn't repel projectiles like I thought it would. But yeah, you can see it is taking effect over time instead of all at once. I like it. I think there's situations where it could be useful as a survivability buff. But there's also the Shroomite enchantment you can get a little bit later, which I think is better for survivability. So I think I'm going to have to place it in C tier. Yeah, place it just underneath the Ancient Hallowed. Didn't repel projectiles, F tier. Yeah, that's the thing, is it said it repelled projectiles, but when I tested it that one time it didn't, so that's going to dock it points. So next up we have the Huntress, I believe. Huntress enchantment. Where are we going to put that? Attacks ignore 6 enemy defense and deal 3 flat extra damage. Each successive attack ignores an additional 6 defense and deals 3 more damage. This stacks up to 10 times. And missing any attack will half your stacks. Homing and minion attacks do not increase these bonuses. So, I should start out doing less damage and then increase the longer I shoot, up to that being the maximum. So yeah, you can deal up to 60 extra defense, well, you can ignore up to 60 defense and deal up to 30 extra damage. So the Uzi is probably a really good indicator of this. So I start out dealing like 50 to 70 damage, although I guess I've not actually lost it yet. Yeah, I need to reset it. Yeah, I start out, there was a 36, a 22, and so on. I didn't realize this worked with piercing projectiles as well, it seems. So up to 800 damage compared to without it. 600, it's actually not that big a deal, all things considered. I thought it would have done more than that. It should be roughly doubling my damage, I would have thought. Is this not working properly? I should be dealing 30 extra damage per shot and ignoring 60 defense per shot. Although I think it's still a decent damage boost. I think I have to put it in C tier. Because you have to, again, be quite... I'm going to put it next to the Crimson enchantment, because these are like the skill-based ones, where you have to be quite good at not missing your shots. Especially because it does better with a fast fire rate weapon that has less damage, because it's going to benefit more from a flat damage boost, and also from ignoring enemy defense. The Iron enchantment, I think they may have changed that as well since I played. Because when I played it didn't actually have an effect when you equipped it, it was just the inventory effect. Oh, your reforges always grant a great prefix for 50% extra cost. Increases item grab range. Okay, so it used to give a chance to not consume items when crafting. But it looks like that's been changed to better reforges, which I do like. It does get points for that. And when equipped, item grab range affects pickup items like hearts, mana stars, and nebula boosters. Picking up an item or pickup increases damage reduction for 20% for 5 seconds. That's interesting. If you were to pair that with the Pearlwood enchantment, which gives you a mana star every 5 seconds, you would be able to get 20% damage reduction almost constantly. Well, I think it's actually every 6 seconds you get the mana star. So that's quite viable. That's like a beetle enchantment in pre-hard mode almost. Well, a level 1 beetle enchantment, pretty much. Let me turn off my encumbering stone to actually see this. Oh, so it doesn't give you a buff, at least, but it should hopefully work with, yeah, 20% damage. That seems quite powerful though. I think B tier is probably the right place for that, next to the beetle enchantment, because it seems like an earlier version of it. So I think I'm going to put that there. And then, what do we have here? What is this? iron, and then struggling to actually figure out what this is. Ah, the jungle enchantment. Yes, this is one of my favourite enchantments that I used in the run. So let's get our mobility off. It gives a really powerful double jump, to be honest. I don't know if it's better than the sandstorm. Let's have a look at the sandstorm. But it's maybe just below the sandstorm. Yeah, it doesn't give us much vertical mobility, but it does give you a little extra damage by these clouds. And also a dash. Very short distance dash, but when you've got no other mobility, and it's also actually a pre-boss dash, the only pre-boss dash. So I think jungle enchantment has to be A tier with the cobalt enchantment, because the ancient cobalt with the jungle enchantment, I mean, that is a really good combination for pre-hard mode. I think you could get through all of pre-hard mode with that, to be honest, as your only mobility. Maybe some boots, actually. But yeah, this is good mobility and good damage. Obviously, you're not going to have this many enemies in a small place unless you're fighting maybe the Eater of Worlds, but yeah, I do like the jungle enchantment. I think it's fair for it to get A tier. Which means we're moving on to the lead enchantment, which also works quite well against the Eater of Worlds, because it makes enemies inflict lead poisoning on themselves and nearby enemies, which deals damage over time. So I don't know if this is going to work on super dummies. It looks like it, yeah, it is working. So 2 damage per second is not bad. And I take 40% less damage from damage over time. Does this go away at any point, or does this just continue? Because if that just continues, and then I take this off, could you start the Eater of Worlds fight by inflicting a few of the segments with lead poisoning, and then stop using the enchantment, swap it out for something else, and it'll just constantly spread between them? Because if so, that's quite good tech, I would say. I think that's a really good option for both damage and damage reduction when it comes to damage over time, at least. I think I would put it bottom of B tier. Oh, and next up is one of my goals. Where is it? The Meteor enchantment. First, let's check what this does. Lead poisoning damage increased, damage over time resistance increased. Okay, so goes up to 6 damage per second. Not bad. Okay, let's clear these guys. Meteor enchantment. So here's my run speed without the Meteor enchantment. Very slow, very slow. Here's my run speed with the Meteor enchantment. Very fast. Especially if you're using swiftness potions. And then there's also the fact that where's the... Yeah, hitting an enemy occasionally drops a meteor on them, dealing magic damage. So let's get a meteor to drop. Look at that. It's just such a cool enchantment. And the more you move around, the faster the cooldown increases for that. And I think once it gets to 0, it just happens instantly. is such a cool enchantment. The fact that you get the magiluminescence effect without having to sacrifice a full slot for it without getting any other benefit, I think it has to go A tier with the Ancient Cobalt and Jungle enchantments. Because in pre-hard mode, these three can really carry you. Like, obviously the B enchantment is better, but they can get you a lot of the way. Especially because you can't actually get the B enchantment by the time you've got these three. Which means it's time to check how the minor enchantment works. Which I don't know if I'm actually going to show fully, because you could probably just tell from the tooltip. Grants immunity to mining explosives, 50% increased mining speed, shows the location of enemies, traps and treasures, effects of Night Owl, Spelunker, Hunter, Shine and Danger Sense potions. Pretty much just the best accessory for exploring and looking for ores. So yeah, like here's, it shows us a chest. If I zoom out a bit and head down the cave, ores. If I tried to mine these, I would have super fast mining speed. And I know I would have super fast mining speed anyway because the Pixel, but it's definitely faster. Basically the only accessory you need for exploration. And for that reason, I think it would be fair to put it alongside the Angler enchantment in A tier. I said, I think it would be fair to put it alongside the Angler enchantment in A tier. One of these days I will get the whole changing between sources thing in OBS. Today's not that day. Okay, next up, Molten Enchantment. You're surrounded by an Inferno Ring. Enemies in the Inferno Ring take 1.2 times damage and are ignited. So, you can see this ring around me. If I deal damage outside, I'm dealing like 250, 260 damage. Inside, it spikes up to 340, 360, 370, that sort of range. So definitely quite a big buff to your damage. But obviously you have to be very close range. If you're doing true melee, I mean it makes sense to use this over most other damage boosting accessories, because even once you're into hard mode, your first damage boosting accessories are going to be the emblems. This is already better than it for true melee. I mean, unless you're using something like the Horseman's Blade, where you're trying to get a hit on the enemy to then spawn a projectile. But even still, you're going to deal a lot more damage with the Molten Enchantment. And the Wizard Enchantment increases the range. Does it increase the range? Yeah, it does. And increases the damage boost to 30%. So it's like wearing two emblems. Which, I mean, you can get this straight into hard mode. And it's got some range to it. This isn't too bad. How many blocks is that? Like 14 blocks? 15 blocks? No. Yeah, 15 blocks I would say. And you're still able to inflict them. Which is probably closer than you would like to be to bosses. But definitely feasible if you've got high defensive loadout. So I think I'm going to give the Molten Enchantment the bottom of B tier. I think it's probably a better damage boost than a lot of these for the time you can get it, because the time you can get that is when things like the Night's Edge are available, and that thing will deal so much more damage with the Molten Enchantment. Plus it has some nice synergy with the Obsidian Enchantment that we'll get to later, because it ignites the player as well, or at least it did when I played. I don't know if that's still the case because I didn't see it in the tooltip. Either way, let's move on to the Monk Enchantment, which allows the ability to dash and gives brief immunity to damage and debuffs after dashing. Dash through an enemy to deal massive melee damage. Dash cooldown is much longer than normal dashes. It's not that long of a cooldown. Depending on how much you dash, that's really not that bad. Deals decent damage. I think it's dealing more damage than the Chlorophyte enchantment was, to be honest. Especially if you lined up multiple of these enemies. Wow. Yeah, if you were fighting the Destroyer with this, you could deal a lot of damage just by dashing through them. It's kind of like a Ram Dash from Calamity, I guess, with a slightly longer cooldown. I think probably one of the best dashes you could get in Calamity, or Fargo, should I say. Increased dash damage with the Wizard enchantment. Okay, yeah, that's quite nice. How much is it against one? Oh, it's like double damage. Wow. Yeah, I think this is the superior dash to the Chlorophyte one. If you're going to be dashing through enemies. Monk saved my life on Fishron, go enchant. Yeah, I think this might be the best dash that you can get at the point in the game where you get it. Especially because it gives you immunity after dashing as well. Like, it's not just dashing through the enemy that you get immunity for. I think it's going to have to go up at maybe the top of B tier. Maybe bottom of A tier. Bottom of A tier, let's say. Although D tier and F tier are looking a bit sad. Aura? Oh. Gen Z brain rot that. Didn't clock that for a second. Mithril enchantment. Let's have a look at that. Temporarily increases attack speed after not attacking for a while. Bonus ends after attacking for 3 seconds and rebuilds over 5 seconds. So this is a difficult one to judge, because the DPS meter kind of doesn't work very well for things like this. Because it doesn't take into account the fact that you're not attacking for 5 seconds and then attacking faster for 3 seconds. I honestly think that you'd better just not using the Mithril enchantment unless you're building a specific loadout around it. Or if maybe you're using True Melee and you're gonna, like, just imagine this is actually True Melee instead of the thing, and you're gonna stay over here, you're gonna charge up your damage, and then you're gonna come in at the enemy and actually hit them, and then retreat, charge up your damage, regen your health, and then come in and deal more damage. So it's a weird enchantment. It's technically a debuff to your damage unless you spec into it specifically. So I don't know if I can really place it any more than D tier, because it does have uses. Like, you can build around it and it can be really good, but if you just try and add it to a build, it's gonna be a reduction to your damage output, or at least basically a net 0 to your damage output. Nebula enchantment is going to be interesting, because that is really good, to be honest, but it's also trying to compete with souls, which are much better than all of the enchantments, so it's quite hard to say whether it's better than the souls. Let's use the Zenith, because you would have the Zenith at this point. So yeah, what this does is it generates, well, once every 3 seconds it replaces a projectile with a homing nebula bolt, which deals damage to an enemy and then generates a nebula booster for you. So you can see I'm getting nebula damage and nebula life regen, which only goes up to level 2, but that's still a pretty good buff, to be honest. I don't know if it says exactly what it is on the tooltip, but it's pretty good if you're not using nebula armor. 15% damage, yeah, it's decent. I do like it. but it's coming up against forces. And it's really hard to say that this enchantment is better than the forces that you could use instead. So I kind of think it's going to have to be... it's hard. It could be B or C. I'm between B or C. I don't know what you guys think. I think D would be a bit unfair. A would definitely be too high. So maybe C. Maybe above Boreal Wood and C. Yeah, let's put it there. That feels fair-ish. And then next up, one of the best enchantments from the run, or at least one of the best enchantments for the time you can get it, the Necro enchantment. Slain enemies may drop a pile of bones, touch a pile of bones to spawn a friendly dungeon guardian, damage scales solely with the defeated enemy's HP, and is capped at 10,000. Bosses will drop bones every 10% of their HP lost. So, let's get some enemies to show how this works, but realistically, it's best used against bosses, because this is annoying. We're just going to fall through. Okay, we need purple slime again. Purple slime is not going to escape. So, they drop bone piles. If I then spawn in more purple slimes and pick up these bone piles, it shoots a projectile to deal damage to them. And in this, it's shooting a Wixel Radley projectile because I've got a texture pack on made by Neville, of course, in the chat. So it's really good against bosses. It basically allows you to deal 36% damage to a boss, which is unheard of in pre-hard mode. And sure, technically the only boss that is really useful against at that point in progression is the Deviant. It's actually really good against the Deviant. It's not so good against the Wall of Flesh, even though I used it against the Wall of Flesh, because when you're running away, fighting the wall here, all of the bone piles just drop behind the wall and you can't get to them, so it's kind of nothing against the Wall of Flesh. But against the right boss, it's even usable into hard mode, I would say, especially because you can then use the Wizard enchantment to make graves float, make them bigger, and make them home into you. So that really does help it out in hard mode. And I don't think you can get many buffs better than 36% damage against bosses until you're quite far into hard mode. Maybe around like the Plantera level enchantments. So with that considered, I think it's fair to put in the Necro enchantment somewhere in the A tier, maybe here, just behind the Miner and the Angler enchantments. I think that's fair. And then next, we have the Ninja enchantment, which makes projectiles have up to 20% extra critical strike chance, scaling with how fast they're moving. Drastically increases projectile speed while you're moving slowly. So, let's have a look at this. I'm not sure what's best to use this with. Maybe with a bow. Boy. Yeah, let's say you've got a demon bow at this point in the game, because this is available after defeating King Slime, so demon bow is probably quite appropriate. So you can see when I'm standing still, I've got this circle around me, this dark circle, and if I move slowly, that stays there. But if I get something like boots, you'll see that that goes away. So if I move too fast, that goes away. And then I stop again, change direction, and it comes back. So if I'm moving, my projectiles move quite slow. But if I stand still, they move very fast and get extra crit chance, up to 20%. So it's quite a nice boost if you're able to move slowly, which I guess you could do by just not equipping boots. You're always going to get an extra 20% crit chance with this. Which I don't know if it shows. Yeah, it doesn't show on the tooltip. but it is a nice boost to your damage. Situational, but good. I think it can go with the other situational but good accessories in the C tier with like the Crimson and the Apprentice. Not Apprentice, the Huntress. And then the Obsidian enchantment is next, which I quite liked in the playthrough, but I don't know if it still has the synergy with the Molten enchantment. Grants immunity to lava, you have normal movement and can swim in lava. While standing in lava or lava wet, your attacks spawn explosions. When afflicted with any debuff or standing in lava, attacks are accompanied by balls of fire that deal magic damage, and fire debuffs don't damage you. So a good way to get the extra fireballs is just to have lava below you that you can always dip into, I guess. But when I was playing, it did have a synergy with the Molten enchantment, where the Molten enchantment would cause you to go on fire, which would then allow you to get the fireballs. I mean, it probably has some synergy with a full lava arena, but the amount of time it would take to make a full lava arena is probably not worth it. Let's get some bubble blocks and some lava. So let's see how this damage does actually. You're probably actually better than the Demon Bow at this stage. Let's say you're using the Blade of Grass actually, that's not a bad shout. That's dealing quite a lot of damage, to be honest. You can put the lava on the arena floor for a Wall of Flesh arena, that's true. It would be quite easy for Wall of Flesh actually, since you're in hell anyway. But a little thing like this, it also stops you slowing down when you go through this, which helps a lot as well. So little bubbles with that can make you constantly throw the balls that deal extra damage. So it's quite a good buff to your damage, I would say. I'm going to put it in B tier with the other damage buffs that are quite good, the Cactus and the Copper. Which takes us to the Orichalcum enchantment, which I would say is a better damage boost for the time you can get it at, because it causes flower petals to attack enemies and increases the damage of Orichalcum poisoning and all other debuffs by 2.5 times. So Orichalcum poisoning, I think, deals something like 10 DPS on its own, and then 25 with the buff. Can't remember, but it's good, basically. This deals a lot of damage, especially against a boss like the Destroyer. I don't know if I'm going to be able to show it without spawning the Destroyer, so you're just going to have to take my word for it, but I would put it up in A tier here, probably. Which kind of brings us to the survivability option at the same area, which is the Palladium enchantment, which is essentially just the Palladium armor, but in accessory form. So you get Palladium rapid life regen when you hit an enemy, and every time you regenerate 80 life, it shoots a projectile that explodes and does damage. Really good option for survivability, and I'm thinking it's probably going to go up in B tier, maybe around here. Yeah, let's put it there. The regen is really nice. Going back to pre-hard mode. Now, it kind of depends on how early you can get this. If you get really lucky and get a coconut and banana early on, this can be really useful. I should get rid of this lava, otherwise it could cause some issues. So yeah, let's get that there. Yeah, this does quite a good bit of damage for early hard mode, early pre-hard mode. It's like around 100 DPS. And you can just place it down and leave it. Like, if you're fighting enemies over here, you can use it for things like the Old Ones Army event, or even just like Blood Moon. I think it's a good option for increasing your damage in the early game. If you can get it early enough, then I would probably put it in like A tier. But if you get really unlucky and can't get the coconut and the banana to drop, I think it's more a C tier. So on balance, I think B tier is fair. Let's put it along with the... It feels similar to the cactus and the copper enchantment, I would say. It feels a similar power level to those. But you can get all of them fairly similar time, I would say. And next up is, I would say, one of the most underpowered enchantments, which is the Pearlwood enchantment. So much so that I had to like do maths to figure out what the best crit level was for it. So as you see, when you're attacking enemies, it spawns mana stars, and if you pick up the star, it shoots a projectile to a nearby enemy. Let me actually get rid of these and have only one. So yeah, you pick up the mana star, it shoots a projectile at it that does damage and empowers your crits for the next 5 seconds. And your empowered crits reroll favourably, so anything that wouldn't crit has a chance to crit. When you have 4% crit chance, it's really not that helpful, but if you have 50% crit chance, it essentially acts as a 25% crit chance buff, which is really good. And if you use something like the Iron enchantment that also gives a buff when you pick up mana stars, in that case it's a 20% damage reduction buff, you can be getting 20% damage reduction and 25% crit chance from 2 accessories, which is a really good combination, I would say. And for that reason, I'm going to put it in A tier, which may be controversial because I know a lot of people do not like this enchantment, or at least think it's overrated, whereas I think it's underrated. What's definitely not underrated though is the Platinum enchantment. I would say it's properly rated. All it does is cause these enemies to have a chance to drop 5 times loot 1/5 of the time, which essentially acts as like a 50% or a doubling of loot that you're going to get. Because I think it also rerolls it 5 times rather than, like, it's not that if it was going to drop 1 bone sword, it drops 5 bone swords. It just gives it 5 chances to roll a bone sword. So yeah, it's really, really good for farming rare drops. And I think it should go up with the Angler and Miner enchantment, because it's kind of the mob farming equivalent to fishing and mining. Like, it just makes mob farming better in the same way that the Angler enchantment makes fishing better and the Miner enchantment makes mining better. So I think that's fair. And then the next on the list is the Pumpkin enchantment, which I really liked, and it was the second enchantment I got, I think, in the playthrough, and I used it for so much of pre-hard mode. What it does is it makes pumpkins grow on the ground. You see a pumpkin here, and if I touch this pumpkin, I get 25 life, and it spawns damaging embers that hit enemies, which can, the enemies can also, so if I let a pumpkin grow here, enemies can also explode the pumpkins. Now, if you are running away in a straight line from a boss, you're probably not going to get much use out of this. But if you can collect every single pumpkin, you're going to get 200 health per minute, which is the equivalent of drinking a super healing potion, which you get in hard mode. Well, no, which you get at the end of hard mode after defeating the lunatic cultists and the pillars. Which is kind of crazy considering you can get this pre-boss. Like, you can get an item pre-boss that is the equivalent of a super healing potion. And no, it doesn't get you cactus. Yeah, I think that the pumpkin enchantment is going to have to get A tier. I think it's one of the best enchantments in the game, to be honest. I'm going to put it up behind the meteor enchantment. Rain enchantment next, which, as you saw in the video, hopefully has some nice synergy with the copper enchantment. For the sole reason that it makes your attacks inflict wet. But it also spawns an umbrella above you that reflects projectiles and breaks after 200. So while using this, you're going to want to have... well, maybe it doesn't... Maybe it doesn't cause slow falling anymore. It used to cause feather fall, but I guess not anymore. So yeah, it's a nice bit of damage reduction, and also works really well against, or with, the copper enchantment against enemies that have multiple segments. There's not really much else to say. I am gonna probably put it in the C tier because it's not as useful as the copper enchantment on its own, but it does have nice synergy. I guess it's gonna go with the other situational enchantments in the C tier. And what is this one? Is this the... I always forget the names of the old ones' army enchantments. That's the Red Riding enchantment, which is the upgrade to the Huntress enchantment. And honestly, it's probably going to go in the same place. This makes attacks ignore 10 enemy defense and deal 5 extra damage, and stacks up the more times you hit an enemy. And if you miss, it reduces it. So you can see on the side here, it gives you the indicator that you're dealing more damage and dealing more damage and dealing more damage. And once you're dealing a full 10 stacks, it also causes arrows to fall on the enemies, which is quite nice. It seems to be quite a good damage boost if you manage to hit all your shots, but if you miss a shot, it doesn't take long for the buff to go away. Yeah, I think it's so situational that... Oh, you're still on the tier list. Yeah, okay. So, the Red Riding enchantment. When you shoot enemies or hit enemies, you will get stacks of damage increases here, which causes your attacks to deal 5 extra damage and ignore 10 defense. Which against enemies with defense basically means you deal 10 extra flat damage. But it's definitely very situational, because if you miss one shot, you can see your stacks half. So it doesn't take many misses for you to completely negate the damage boost that you've got. And considering if you were using a really slow weapon like the sniper rifle, it wouldn't benefit much from this because it already deals high damage, so an extra 10 damage isn't going to do much. You're best using it with a fast weapon like the Uzi or the Mega Shark or something, which makes it really hard to miss. So I don't think I can place it very high. I think it's going to have to be with the Huntress enchantment in C tier. Let's put the Rain enchantment a little bit higher than that. And then another one of my favourites, actually, from the run is the Rich Mahogany enchantment. This makes grappling hooks pull 1.5 times as fast, shoot twice as fast, and retract 3 times as fast. Which is all to say, it makes hooks really good. So if I grab a diamond hook, which you'd hopefully have... Oh, I already had one equipped. Never mind. Yeah, you can basically use a hook as your main method of transportation with this. I probably could have used it for much longer than I did in the playthrough, but I prefer other forms of transportation. Oh, hey Wexel, it's nice to see you. Glad you could join. Yeah, the rich mahogany is definitely really good for when you can obtain it. The wizard enchantment doesn't do much, it just increases the stats a bit more. Which honestly isn't necessary. I don't think you gain much from the wizard enchantment with this. But I do think if you're in early hard mode, or early pre-hard mode, and you're able to make this, it's a really good option. I think B tier feels right for this. Probably above the lead enchantment, maybe not above the fossil enchantment. And then next is the shadewood. Let's have a look at what the shadewood does. It gives an aura of bleeding. Enemies struck while bleeding spew damaging blood, dealing melee damage. Interesting. Let's reduce the amount of enemies so we can see that. So yeah, you can see the little blood projectiles, I guess. I think it would be hard to use this in a lot of scenarios, especially against bosses. But it's an early pre-hard mode option, so it's hard to say it's useless, it's just not very useful. I think it's probably going to end up with the other wood enchantments in F tier, but it's at the top of the F tier, to be fair, which means it's better than the alternatives. That's what that means. What is this one? The shadow enchantment on its own. Just shadow enchantment. Two shadow orbs will orbit around you. Attacking a shadow orb will cause it to release a burst of homing shadow energy, dealing magic damage. So this is just the downgrade to the ancient shadow enchantment, which we've already reviewed. And honestly, it's going to be really hard to actually hit the... Yeah, there we go. Honestly, I do not think that this has got much use. Unless you're using something like the mini shark to actually hit them. Let's get the mini shark out. Because you kind of need something fast to hit these. And if you're concentrating so much on hitting the orbs, you're probably not concentrating on hitting the boss. And you could just wait for it to come round, but yeah, that's probably a better way of doing it. But then you miss, and yeah. I think overall this is kind of a bad enchantment, I'm not gonna lie. I think probably actually F tier, maybe the bottom of F tier. No, it's better than these guys. Here, it's gonna go here. And at the other end of the progression, we have the Shinobi Infiltrator enchantment, which is an upgrade to the Monk enchantment, granting a teleport dash that makes you immune to damage and debuffs, and also deals melee damage to anything you dash through. You can also dash into walls to teleport through them to the next opening. So yeah, that's a pretty good dash, to be honest. Look at that. That's a fun dash. Basically a ram dash, but you teleport instead of ramming, and you still deal damage to the enemies and get the immunity. So if I head down here, I'll see if I can try the dashing through a wall thing. Oh wow, that works, yeah. Interesting. I don't know how useful that would be during a boss fight, but it could be useful for exploring, I guess. I'm gonna say that the Shinobi Infiltrator enchantment is just better than the Monk enchantment. It's gonna get A tier as well. Bringing us on to another one of my favourites from the playthrough, the Shroomite enchantment. So when equipped, it will make mushrooms heal 50 HP, and consuming them grants mushroom power for 20 seconds, which grants an additional 20% damage and critical strike chance. This essentially acts as like a multi-class version of the beetle enchantment, with a slight cooldown. And I don't know if it was, I don't know if it was the shroomite that was causing it to right, so cooldown of 25 seconds, but that's going down quicker than 1 time per second. I think that this will run out around the same time the mushroom power does. It seems to tick down about twice as fast. Yeah, so it looks like the potion sickness ticks down much faster with the shroomite enchantment equipped, which is really nice because it means you get the same healing, or maybe slightly worse healing than you would otherwise, but you do get the 20% damage and crit chance. And as an added effect, piercing projectiles spawn a cloud of mushrooms on their first hit. So let's have a look at that. Okay, so it's not actually going to hit any of the enemies, but that's fine. If we go this way, it'll maybe hit. Yeah. I think, yeah, this is a really good buff. 20% damage and crit is really big. And I think it probably deserves a spot in the A tier. Maybe slightly better than the Pearlwood, and slightly worse than the Dark Artist. Bringing us, is that the Silver Enchantment? Yeah, Silver Enchantment is next. This is another highly skill-based one. So it grants a dodge essentially, or a parry. If you are good at the game, this is the best accessory in the game. If you're bad at the game, this is the worst accessory in the game, because it really, really depends on your skill level. It's simply useless if you are not very skilled. If you're someone like Wexel Radley, who relies on this almost against legendary masochist Duke Fishron, then this accessory is going to be S tier. But if you're someone a bit more like me, who probably can't time the parry that well, it's probably going to be F tier. So I think the actual reality is that it's somewhere in the middle. But let's get some enemies to test it. Let's actually, yeah, just try it against. I'm actually so bad at this. What? Okay, there we go. Okay, yeah, I can get the gist of it, maybe. Ah, it's because it was on cooldown, I think. Yeah, it's got a 3-second cooldown. Skill issues. Yeah, it is literally skill issue. Skill issue, the enchantment. And because of that, I don't think it's fair to put it in S tier. Because we have to think about the average player. Is the average player going to be able to time their right clicks or wherever they bind the parry button to so perfectly that they don't get hit? Probably not. The average player is probably not going to get much use out of this enchantment. To the average player, it is probably D tier. To the best player, it is S tier. I think B tier is fair, all things considered. Probably up there with Fossil, slightly worse than the Mahogany enchantment, I would say. I'm sorry, Wexel, but it had to be done. And I did clear earlier on in the stream that like everything in this list is still viable. It's just that the ones above are more viable than the ones below. Like, I don't think there is any bad enchantments in the game that are like net negatives. It's just that you know, the bee enchantment is going to be better than the shadow enchantment for the time you can get them at. What we got next? The snow enchantment. Your attacks briefly inflict blah blah. If I could speak, your attacks briefly inflict frostburn. Snowballs will start to appear around you. Attacking will launch them towards the cursor, dealing magic damage. That's actually decent damage, I would say. How does it deal if I just shoot constantly? So around 120 damage with the frost enchantment, snow enchantment. And without it, it's around 100 damage. So you get an extra 20 DPS from this, which is actually quite bad, all things considered. Plus the frostburn, I guess. Frostburn is nice. It maybe has some synergy with some accessories that give you buffs for not attacking. But realistically, I think there's going to be better options for damage at that point. I think probably C tier, maybe D tier even. Probably D tier, to be honest. Yeah. I'm afraid so. Solar enchantment. I like the solar enchantment. I liked it a lot. I think it was one of the few post-Moonlord enchantments that was actually usable over horses. Just wanted to pop in and say the new video was good. Well, thank you very much. I had stopped watching at Moonlord, but until then it was good. That's fair, yeah. There's not much after Moonlord, to be honest. I kind of speedran through the end of the game. So, solar enchantment. Build up solar charge when attacking, gain damage reduction the more charge is stored, up to 20%, stop attacking when fully charged to release a large solar blast. So I will demonstrate with the Zenith because that's what you'd have at this stage. You can see the bar here, I'm getting slightly higher damage reduction, and then once it's fully charged, I stop attacking and it deals a massive amount of damage. So it's kind of the opposite of the snow enchantment I just covered. But yeah, I think this is a really good enchantment. I think it's probably up in B tier, at the top of B tier, with the beetle and iron. Maybe in between them, to be honest. I think that feels right. These all give damage reduction. This gives the most damage reduction, this gives it more consistently, and this makes it difficult to get, and that's all it gets. So it feels right that they're all in the same area. So let's take a look at the Spectre enchantment next, which is another one that is very good for hardcore because it's an upgrade to the fossil enchantment, and when you die you will respawn as a ghost with infinite flight time. You'll be unable to take damage for 5 seconds, and you'll have a bunch of ghosts that you can collect for extra health. So let's die. So you see I've died, and I can run around, grab these, and they also shoot at nearby enemies, dealing a decent amount of damage. I mean, nothing crazy for the time you're getting them, but decent all the same. I think Spectre enchantment has a lot of use in certain runs, especially hardcore ones, but overall it's probably not that useful compared to something like maybe the Palladium enchantment. I'm going to put it just above Fossil. They're pretty much... It's just an upgraded version of the Fossil, so it feels right to go next to it. It's the kind of the only option you've got for that specific niche, so it feels fair. Spider enchantment is also the only option you have for a certain niche, which is making minions deal crits. Considering the amount of other options you have for increasing crit chance, it feels right that this exists. Because if you have something like the palmwood and the pearlwood enchantment, should I say, that allows you to deal crits more often, something like this is going to be really useful if you're a summoner. Because you're basically just leaving damage on the floor if you have a bunch of crit boosts as a summoner. Things like the Wrath Potion aren't going to help, although the Rage Potion, they're not going to help as a summoner, but if you use this, they will. It's not quite the double damage you get for crits on other classes, but 1.5 damage is still pretty good. So yeah, I would say this is really viable all the way up to the point you're getting forces, because it's the only thing that does it. I think it would be fair to put it at the top of B tier, above the Beetle. Okay, get the music going again. Okay, I need to drink some water, give me a second. Okay, and I'm back. The spooky enchantment next. I didn't actually look at this at all in the playthrough. This could be really good for all I know. So it gives your minions an extra scythe attack. And let's get rid of that so I can use just the spider. So let's try it without the... So without it, it's dealing like 84, 85 damage, 75 roughly. And then if I equip it, it's dealing quite a lot more actually. This could be a good one for summoners, but for other classes probably not that useful, all things considered. One of those like good damage boosts that just, that's all it does. I think it can go with the middle of B tier with other damage boosts like the cactus, copper, and palmwood. Like anything in B tier is like a really good option that you could use to fill a slot. I think the stuff in A and S are like worth going out of your way to collect for a certain loadout. And then anything below is like, if you really need the extra slot to fill, then you could go for that. One that's going to be quite hard to place is the Squire enchantment. Because this is a really nice accessory. What it does is it improves the speed of all mounts, grants a double jump to grounded mounts, and increases their jump height, and gives you fall damage immunity. And as an added buff, it also increases the effectiveness of healing sources by 10%. So if I was to use a mushroom, I would get slightly more life than I would otherwise. You can see it's 16 instead of 15. I assume that's just because it rounds down rather than up. But overall, it's like a really good buff. You don't quite get the dash that you get from Valhalla, but if you're planning on using mounts instead of wings, then this thing is really good. And especially if you're using a grounded mount, like say I get the goat horn. Oops. Like you get the jump from the goat horn, and then you get the fart and jar jump from the Squire enchantment. It's actually like a really good option if you wanted to save on accessory spaces. Because you accelerate much faster, your top speed is faster, you've got extra jump height. I think it's really viable. Maybe not quite A tier, but I think at the top of B tier is fair for this one. Next up, we have the Stardust enchantment. which is another one that has to be binded to something. Although it gives a buff without being binded because it makes the Stardust Guardian spawn. But the real value is in this. So, if I use my keybind, it freezes time. Any projectiles or enemies won't be able to hit me at this time, but my minions still deal damage. Annoyingly, that's going to take a long time to tick down. But it's just really good. It's like the gold stasis, but kind of more powerful because you can still attack and move. You can like position yourself a bit better. You're not going to be stuck coming out of the gold stasis and taking a bunch of damage. Why does it say... Oh, it was 2 minutes because it rounded up. If I equip the wizard, does it tick down faster? No. But anyway, I think, along with the solar enchantment, it's one of the few viable post-Moonlord enchantments, so I'm going to put it next to it. In fact, yeah, let's put it just under the Squire enchantment. I think you can use it to cheese certain attacks, especially with the post-Moonlord bosses. There are so... Like, there's so many projectiles that being able to just get a little break for a few seconds is actually quite valuable. Another heavily minion-related one, or, well, not necessarily minion-related, but another one from a minion armor set, is the Tiki armor, or the Tiki enchantment, which really buffs whips. So let's get a whip. Kaleidoscope, since that's probably what you would be using at this stage. So, without it, you have to zoom out a bit, because the kaleidoscope actually has a really long range by default. So there's about the range. With it, the range goes a little bit further. I think it's supposed to be 20% further. Yeah. I don't quite know if that is 20% further. It feels like maybe slightly less. But it also allows you to whip your minions to make them deal extra damage. So I'm currently doing around 800 to 1000 DPS, let's say 900 DPS. If I take this off, that goes down to like 800, 700. It's a pretty sizable DPS increase. And obviously you'd be using something better than a spider minion, and you'd probably have a lot more minions than just one. So, as a damage boost for summoners, I think it's probably better than the spooky. Therefore, I think maybe up here, to be honest, between the Ancient Hallowed and the Palladium. I think it's a really viable enchantment, so it's going to go there. Next up, the Tin enchantment, which is another one of those really highly skill-based ones, because it sets your crit to 5%, and then every time you crit, it will increase by 5% up to 15%. So it's going to be really hard to show this with such low crit chance. Oh, never mind, I managed to get it to proc twice quite fast. So I've now got 15% crit chance rather than 5, or the 4 that I would have had otherwise. So it's like a 10% boost if you have the base crit chance, but if you have more crit chance, it increases it up to double your original crit chance. So if you have a 30% crit chance, you can get up to 60% crit chance from the Tin enchantment. The downside is that getting hit will reduce your crit chance. So if I get another enemy in, another purple slime perhaps, just going to zoom in a bit more, you can see that my crit goes down to 7%. And then if I get hit again, it's probably going to go down to 3%, or maybe it caps out at 5% minimum. Yeah, it caps out at 5% minimum. So really, really good if you're skilled and don't get hit. If you are not so skilled, it's not that useful. So I think it would be fair to put it with the Crimson enchantment, because it's kind of the same sort of vibe as that, where it's really good if you're good with it, and it's really bad if you're bad with it, because if it's actually actively bad for your crit chance if you get hit a lot. If you're going to get hit by an enemy every like 3 seconds, then you're better off not using this. It's one of the few enchantments that probably decreases your damage output, or at least has the ability to decrease it. So I think there's probably fair. So let's look at the titanium enchantment next. This will make your attacks. Let's get the Uzi for this. Your attacks will generate the titanium barriers, which can increase your damage output by a fair bit. And when you've got the full shards, you also get the titanium shield, which gives you damage reduction and resistance to most debuffs. So one of those that's actually good for both offense and defense. But realistically, there may be others that are better. I hope for why is that a hard sentence to say? I hope for thorium enchantments to return in 2026 or something. Maybe at some point. I feel like thorium enchantments would be more worthwhile than calamity enchantments. Because thorium's armors are a bit more interesting, I would say. And there's a lot more of them as well. And it's also maybe a bit better balanced for vanilla than Calamity is. Calamity's kind of got its own balance and its own boss difficulty, so Fargo's add-on concentrating on thorium compatibility would be quite nice. For now though, I think as good as it is, I think this can't go any higher than C tier. Probably the bottom of C tier, to be honest. It's nice, but just not necessary. Something that probably is necessary if you're doing a melee loadout in pre-hard mode is the tungsten enchantment. Because yeah, look at the size of my blade of grass without the tungsten enchantment, and then look at the size of it with it. That is such a big difference, and it also makes your melee weapons attack with a shockwave every 2.5 seconds for extra damage. So not only does it give you a better range for damage, it also gives you more damage. It's probably the best melee enchantment in free hard mode, and for a lot of hard mode it's probably the best as well, until you get a certain other enchantment that also increases range. Or is it another accessory? I can't remember, but I feel like there's something else that increases your melee range. Honestly, I think it has to go in A tier. Probably between the Shroomite and the Pearlwood. What's this next? The Turtle enchantment. So this is kind of like the gold enchantment and the Stardust enchantment, where it kind of gives you a break during boss fights to not take damage. Let me... So you can see if I move, I am not in a shell. But if I stand still, I go in a shell. And when I'm in my shell, I take 90% less damage, destroy incoming projectiles, and deal 10 times more thorns damage. And the shell lasts for either 1 second or 20 attacks blocked. So if you're doing this in a boss fight where there's so many projectiles coming in at you and you're going to get, you know, bombarded within 3 seconds, this maybe isn't that useful. But if you're in a boss fight where you can stand still and get hit maybe once every 3 seconds or so, this could be quite useful. So let's get some enemies in to actually show it in action. Don't have to aggro these. So yeah, it's an upgrade to the cactus enchantment as well, so you get the thorny cactus effect. I don't even know if we're going to run out of the shell at this point. yeah. Quite viable for certain bosses. It's the sort of thing you have to plan for and build around. Overall, I think it's probably worse than the Golden Stardust for the same kind of effect. So I'm thinking C tier, maybe up here in C tier? That feels fair. And now is one of my favourite enchantments from the run, the Valhalla enchantment. Everything I said about the Squire enchantment applies to this. You get the jump height, the extra jump, the movement speed, but you basically get more of it all. And also, a dash. That's the main thing. Because I feel like a lot of the time people don't use mounts specifically because they won't be able to dash. But with this, you do get a dash, and it's actually quite a long dash as well. It works better for something like the broom, because you can also dash vertically, which doesn't work so well going downwards. But the vertical dash is really useful in certain situations, like more useful than it would be to have wings with a more typical dash, I would say. And for that reason, I think it is very fair to put the Valhalla enchantment up in S tier along with the B enchantment. These carried my movement for all of pre-hard mode / early hard mode and then late hard mode. Okay, next up we have the Vortex. We're coming to the last three now, so let's see how they stack up. First is the Vortex, which makes my attacks against very distant enemies fire a piercing laser that deals range damage with a 10-second cooldown. So I don't actually know how far it has to be for this. Not that far. But how much damage does it deal? So I'm dealing about 5,000 DPS right now. It spikes up to like 7,000 for a second. I do not think that that is a worthwhile enchantment to use after Moonlord. You already have so many different forces and enchantments that you can use that this actually might be an F tier enchantment. It actually might be the bottom of F tier, to be honest. This might be the worst enchantment in the game, because there's so much else that's better at that stage. You have like all of the forces, other than the Force of the Cosmos, that deal so much extra damage, give you so much survivability, give you movement, give you all of these things. And then there's the Vortex enchantment, which sometimes fires a laser that deals a couple of thousand damage. Not worth it. Something that definitely is worth it is the Wizard enchantment. It might even be able to make the Vortex enchantment worth it. Maybe not. But if I say, well, the best enchantment to use this with is the B enchantment. This does nothing on its own, but it upgrades the enchantment in the slot below it. So let's grab the B enchantment again, because I think that's the best example of what it does. So I'm just take the wings off for that, because the B enchantment acts as wings. So without the Wizard enchantment, these are pretty terrible wings. These deal a little damage, like 170, 180. With the Wizard enchantment, these are excellent wings. And the bees deal a lot of damage, up to like 1,400, 1,500 sort of level. And I can also get three sets of the bees going at once, dealing a lot of damage. Overall, probably the best enchantment in the game because of the sheer utility that you get from it. You can use this with every other enchantment on the list and you'll get a unique effect to it. I think it will not be controversial to put that right at the top. Which brings us to the last enchantment, which coincidentally is also the first enchantment that I got in the playthrough, and probably the first enchantment that most people can get, because all it needs in its recipe is some wood armor, a daybloom, an apple, and a squirrel, which really isn't much. And it also doesn't do very much. In fact, everything that it does do can be done from the inventory, so there's really no point in equipping it. Oh, no, in fact, no. It's just the discount that works from the inventory. But what it allows you to do is get banner entries twice as fast. So instead of having to kill 50 enemies to get a banner, you only have to kill 25. Which helps. But realistically, it's not that useful. Fargo's does add a lot of recipes that use banners, so it's more useful than it would be in vanilla. Like if I look up the Bone Serpent banner, it can make a hot dog, or the Mimic banner can make all of the things that Mimic drops. Goblin Scout doesn't do anything. Goldfish can give you 100 goldfish, or a goldfish kite. Like, a lot of these have recipes. That's actually a really good one, the Meteor Head banner. There we go. This is probably the most useful one for pre-boss, because you can get a lot of meteorite before taking down one of the evil bosses. But overall, like, you're probably going to get a lot anyway. I don't think you need the wood enchantment to benefit that. I think it's nice, but probably D tier. So I think that's my ranking of all of them. I don't know if there's any that I would want to move. I'm quite happy with that, to be honest. So let me know in the live chat or the comments if there's any changes you would make, but I think for me that's a pretty accurate ranking of how I would put each enchantment. So thank you for watching this stream/video, and for watching the original video as well, if you did. I mean, it would be weird of you to watch this video without watching that one, I must say. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next stream, which will hopefully be quite soon. I'll be doing a new playthrough starting soon. So yeah, I'll see you guys later. Thanks.